Thank you. We move next here tonight to a new report that now reveals the vast majority of Florida's transgender adults feel unsafe in this state and are now looking to leave. Florida Capitol reporter Forrest Saunders joining us live tonight from Tallahassee with a deeper dive into these numbers for us. And this now speaks to Florida's national reputation.
Yeah, so let me give you some context here, Paul. This was all done by the Human Rights Campaign. This is an annual survey that they do year after year, but it was important for them this year, especially because states like Florida put in place policies that limited gender dysphoria treatments for trans minors and adults. After months of criticism and protest of new laws limiting access to gender dysphoria treatments.
No justice! No peace!
Floridians weighing in on this new Human Rights Campaign survey of more than 14,000 LGBTQ plus adults nationally. The numbers show trans and non-binary in Florida think the bans hurt mental and physical health, make them feel less safe, and want to relocate.
The results are frustrating and devastating, but not surprising.
That's Justin Unga with the group that created the survey. He said it should serve as a red flag to Florida's economy as departures are bad for business, but also to the lawmakers pushing the policies as Election Day nears.
We have a saying at the Human Rights Campaign, and that is, when you come for us, talking about politicians, we will come for you at the ballot box.
Florida's GOP-controlled legislature approved the gender dysphoria bans this year. They restrict hormone therapy and surgery for minors while cutting insurance coverage for adult treatments.
This is politics, not science.
Republicans, like Florida's House Speaker, have defended the changes as protecting children from what they consider experimental and unproven science.
I think before we, basically mutilate another child, we need to know what is the scientific basis for this. Let's talk about it. Let's be transparent about it.
His comments came despite the therapies getting support from groups like the American Academy of Pediatrics, Endocrine Society, and the American Medical Association, though Republicans have accused those groups of not showing their work. But the real battle over these bans likely happening right now in the courts. Florida's new regulations facing lawsuits, and plaintiffs have scored early victories, winning temporary blocks for a handful of patients until the larger legal disputes are resolved. Now let's talk a little bit about that lawsuit against the ban for trans minors. Plaintiffs have recently tried to upgrade their lawsuit to a class action, and the thought here would be that any victory could potentially apply all across the state rather than just their collection of clients. The state has fired back an illegal filing, calling it completely inappropriate.
Yeah,
Paul?
Another legal challenge, Forrest. And we also need to talk about the governor's campaign tonight. The first Republican presidential debate just under a week away, next Wednesday, August 23rd. Looking unlikely that former President Donald Trump is going to be there. But there was news that came out today about how the governor is going to navigate through this debate, potentially this internal memo that was leaked, which seems to happen a lot with Team DeSantis. But there are two key points in this thing. One, it said essentially defend Trump, and then two, hammer Vivek Ramaswamy, who seems to be on the rise. But I don't understand this. Why not go after Trump? He's the one in the lead.
Right, and that's something that the DeSantis campaign has been criticized for in the past by some of its supporters, not going harder against Trump. You know, I've talked to Iowans out on the campaign trail just as recently as a few days ago, and they continue to tell me they're struggling to understand why DeSantis won't swing back harder. And the simple metrics here are that he's trying to court the Trump base. He doesn't want to isolate them because he knows if he's going to win the nomination, he's going to need at least some of the Trump supporters to come over to his side. So he has to be very delicate there. And at the same time, he has these other opponents who are starting to rise in the polls. And so he's going to put more of a focus on them. We'll have to see if that plays out for him, of course. But right now, it doesn't look like that strategy is really having the intended effect, because you're seeing guys like Vivek Ramaswamy rise in the polls, as well as former Governor Chris Christie.
Yeah, meanwhile, Ramaswamy, he's now third in the national polls. And as you note, rising. He called DeSantis a super PAC puppet today. He seemed to be suggesting that if DeSantis actually goes along with the script on this playbook that was leaked in this memo, that he ends up looking exactly like the kind of inauthentic politician that he's accused of being, and perhaps is the source of his sagging poll numbers being too calculated and not real enough.
Yeah, I mean, that is an ongoing criticism as well of the governor, is that he's just too rigid on the campaign trail. And we've seen that from his supporters. We've seen that from his donors, all criticizing him for not being more authentic and not being more real. So yes, if he does follow suit with some of these criticisms, as pointed out in the memo, it's going to look like he's just using copy-paste phrases and not being in the moment. And that's obviously something that plays very heavily with Iowans. They like to see an authentic politician. They like to meet someone that they can relate to, and it's hard to do that if you're just regurgitating lines that have already been published in outlets like the New York Times.
Well, that debate can't come soon enough for DeSantis. For Saunders live from Tallahassee tonight. Thank you, sir. Still to come at 5.